Hi friends, it's Juliana here for Lifeway Women, and it's a little hard to believe, but Christmas is just around the corner, and our team is really excited. We have a new Advent study, O Come, Emmanuel. It's a 5-week study that is designed to help parents, students, children, all really engage and really focus in on the joy and peace that Christ can bring during the holiday season. So with that in mind, I brought together some of my friends today who wrote for this study for us for Lifeway Women. So I'm really excited. We have Joy Almond. Now Joy works on the Lifeway communications team. We also have Lindley Mandrell here with us. She is the lovely wife of Lifeway CEO Ben Mandrell, and Elizabeth Heineman, who some of you may know. She is also the co-host of the Marked podcast. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Now, for some of us, Advent may be something that we're a little unfamiliar with. What was perhaps maybe the first time or place that you first heard of Advent, or you first started observing and celebrating that season, that part of Christmas?
So Ben and I came from pastoral ministry, like you know, and so when we began at our church in Jackson, Tennessee, there was an older couple there that was very passionate about it, and so they made wreaths. Like they made wreaths for everybody. Whoever wanted one, you could sign up and they would do it for you. And so that was kind of our first experience with the Advent wreath. I mean, we didn't, either one of us grow up with it. And so we have that. We still have it now. We do it with our kids. And so that was kind of that was it for us.
Oh, wow. That's such a wonderful family tradition, too. I feel like something, as your kids grow older, that they're going to take away with them, maybe to their own families one day. So.
Well, it was a ministry, too, for that family. I mean, it was an older couple whose kids were grown. And so they just like doing it for everybody. And we picked it up from their house. And, it was a special way to connect.
Elizabeth, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you kind of heard about Advent, or maybe...
I mean, I think we didn't really use the word Advent for a long time growing up. I mean, we celebrated the advent of Jesus, but we didn't necessarily call it that. I do remember, though, at some point in my childhood, my home church started doing Advent candles. And they didn't always do it. And so I don't remember there being like a full explanation of what we were doing, but we would light the candles every Sunday, like the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas. And so that was kind of my first introduction to the word Advent and the candle kind of ceremony, I guess, or tradition.
Yeah, that's fun. So each of you wrote and contributed to a different part of our O Come, Emmanuel Advent study. So I'd love for you to share maybe what it is that you wrote and kind of why that was on your heart for this season.
I was thinking of, first of all, I was writing on the passage Ephesians 5:6-11. And as I was reading the passage, I learned that Paul was writing that passage to a newly formed family, the Ephesians. And I thought about everything that has happened this year, everything that is happening, all the divisiveness, just the really painful cultural moments we've had, the pandemic, which really has caused a ripple effect of loss in different forms for so many people. So when I read that he had written this to a newly formed family, I thought about all the families who would be gathering at Christmas and how high tensions might be. And I thought about my own family. As wonderful as they are, no family's perfect. And I thought about just how easy it is to fall into patterns of darkness or patterns of who you were before Jesus saved you, when you get around the people who knew you when. And so I really, and this was really written to myself too, just to encourage everyone reading this, who they are and who has purchased them. And that even though it's been a really, really terrible year for a lot of people, that this is still a season of hope, and that hasn't changed. And that even though for many of us we're in somewhat of a season of darkness, or even maybe just a little bit dim, that we're still called to live as children of light.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. I mean, especially this time of year, we need that reminder now more so than ever of the hope that we have in Emmanuel, that God is with us. So, Lindley, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you wrote for this study?
Sure. So I was under the Desire of Nations portion, and so having come from pastoral ministry for 18 years, my topic was simply peace in the church. And, there's lots of different scriptures that I alluded to, but one thing that I just specifically that resonated with me was the saying that we always said at our previous church was seek to understand before seeking to be understood. And so that's just something that has been really important to Ben and I, is that, in the world of social media, people just have an edge and they just want to get their opinion out. And so what we said in here and just in our churches is that if people would try a little bit harder to understand, then it would be so much more peaceful than if it's just, I want to get my opinion out there. I want to say what I want to say. So that was kind of one of the points in my study.
I think that's such a powerful reminder just for us, as the church, as the body of Christ, to seek to understand.
Yeah.
And I just love kind of hearing and talking about the different ways that the Lord laid different things on your heart, and how this study was written months and months ago, and we had no idea of what, the Lord was going to be doing in our lives and in our country. So Elizabeth, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you shared, what you wrote in the study?
So I got to write the introductions. So that's one of my favorite things because I get to kind of see all of the things. But one of the things that I talked about was the song. So the study is based on O Come, O Come, Emmanuel. And one thing that I love about the song, which it's not scripture, so it's not inspired, but it's the verbs that are in the song, which, hang on, this is real grammar nerdy, but it's not. So in the second sentence of the chorus is, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. And before that it says, rejoice, rejoice. Emmanuel shall come to thee, which is a future tense. And so just thinking through how Israel was called to rejoice before they got Emmanuel. So they were rejoiced because it's going to happen. And so I think in today's world, we're rejoicing already for the second advent, the second coming of Jesus. And so I think that's one of the things that I loved about this study in particular, is we did try to look forward to the second advent as well as celebrate the first. And what a reminder, like y'all were saying, in our world right now that's so full of strife and anything but peace and comfort, that God is still with us, but also there's coming a day when he is, we'll be able to see him and touch him as Emmanuel, because he'll be with us.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And thinking about the song, O Come, Emmanuel, one of the things that I love about this study is it does focus on the 4 names for Jesus that are in that song. And those names are Emmanuel, Dayspring, Wisdom, and Desire of Nations. So is there maybe a specific name for Jesus that really is resonating with you this season?
I love Desire of Nations, and it makes me tear up, and I'm not even a teary person, but I just love the world. Ben and I, we were in Colorado, and we just like being in unchurched areas. That's just our heart. And so, even during the quarantine, with our children, we have 4 kids. I had them learn all the countries in the world. We went through a computer program and just learn it all, because I just want them to know it. I want them to know, there's this big, huge world out there, and there's so many people. Even in Colorado, we had a neighbor 2 doors down who had never even heard the word church. And so it's there is such a great lostness out there. And so for me, the Desire of the Nation is really, really the one that hits me the most.
That's true. What about you, Elizabeth? Was there kind of one of the names for Jesus that really has resonated with you, maybe even just this year?
Yeah, Emmanuel, God sent his son to be with us, at the risk of being human and being infected. He came down and was with us, touched us, walked alongside with us, ate with us, all that kind of stuff. And so that, to me, this year, I have always loved that name for Jesus, but this year it just meant all the more, because it's we can't do that with each other, and we were so completely built for this, and I feel we learned to long for it even more so this year than we maybe have in the past.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, Joy, what about for you? Is there one of those names that has really resonated with you?
Definitely Emmanuel. And it's similar to what Elizabeth was saying. It's really pertaining to so many people who were more isolated than others. I think about the elderly in nursing homes who couldn't be visited by their families, or have a few single friends who are hours away from family and had to stay alone. And so it makes me think about how ever present Jesus has been with them through these last few months of isolation, and how we might feel alone, but he never leaves us, and he is with us all the time. And so that point was really driven home to me as I was working through my study and just through the entire concept of God with us.
Yeah. And I think that's something, with the holiday season, a lot of times it feels like every year, you're running 90 miles an hour, especially, our women, you've got kids that you're carpooling around, and you've got commitments with church and school and work and all of these different things. And it can be really hard for us, especially as women, to stop and to really focus in on Christ and the season. So, Lindley, why don't you tell us a little bit about maybe how that your family, or just some encouraging ways that we can kind of stop and refocus and recenter during the busy holiday season.
Right, really busy. And I mean, this past Christmas season was actually our first not in pastoral ministry, and so it was really kind of our slowest and most enjoyable, which is ironic when you're in the church. But being outside of it gave us a little extra time. And things that I tell to young moms is to it's just to keep it simple. I think we get overwhelmed sometimes and then don't do it at all, versus just doing something a little bit every day. So with my kids, we have a 25-day calendar thing, and every day, of course, has something fun with it, but then also the scripture that ties into it and it's little things. It takes, 5 to 10 minutes. So, my advice to all young moms, since mine are now teenagers, is just to do little things every little day. It's kind of like that, faithful with the little things. And, the kids are catching on to that.
Now, Joy, I know for you, this year may be a little bit different. We are still kind of in the middle of a pandemic. How do things look different for you? How maybe have you taken time to kind of slow down this holiday season?
Well, my husband and I, between the two of us, we have 3 sets of parents in 3 different states. So in years past, it's really been a mad rush to try to get to everyone. We can't be in 3 states on Christmas Day, but we've definitely made concessions to try to gather with everyone. While it's sad to not be able to partake of every tradition, in a different way, I'm kind of seeing this as a gift of rest, because I can't remember a Christmas or Advent season where I haven't been rushing around trying to make every event, trying to get the shopping done, trying to do all the things. And so it's actually a way for me to focus my mind and my heart and not have to worry about traveling so much. And so that's something I'm really embracing, even though it's going to be hard to not be able to partake of the traditions.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I really love about this study is it does offer activities for, parents, for adults, students, and children to really do those activities, create maybe even new traditions at home. Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about some of that.
So this study, first of all, I would like to say that it is a Bible study. So I think a lot of times, at least last year, we're used to doing like devotionals where we read like a little verse, which are great and perfect for so many seasons of life. But I think when it comes to Advent, we're used to just like a really short thing, and you're going to be digging into the Bible when you do this. So that's one of the things that I love about this, is because I'm maybe not as busy as someone with children, but a lot of times with Advent season, I forget that, the cheesy saying, Jesus is the reason for the season. And I just forget that sometimes. Yeah. And so
it's easy to do.
Yeah. And so this offers the opportunity to like really dig into scripture and really fully feel the Advent, like the waiting for Advent. But I really love the activities because they not only do they have activities for kids and for teens, but also for adults. So like I can just do these by myself or get some friends together to do them. But they all also point to like the names of Jesus. So Emmanuel, Dayspring, Desire of Nations, Wisdom. I was like, what are those for? So it is a great opportunity to like even as you're making cinnamon ornaments or doing these different things to still be readying your heart for Advent and Jesus is coming.
I love in this study, I'm sorry, but one thing, so all 4 of my kids are teenagers, and so often Advent is directed towards children,
right,
which are much easier to do little preschool things. And
yes,
so I actually love that this study hits teens specifically, so that you can have some ideas what to do with them in a busy season, because they're all way more involved in stuff even at school.
Right.
And so you may only have one time a week to do something like this, but that's what it is. I mean, you can pick out one day each week to do something with your teenagers.
Yeah. And I'm really excited. Of course, I'm, the social media girl on the Lifeway Women team. So we're going to be sharing some of those activities on our Instagram, doing some reels and just some fun things for ways that our women can engage their teenage kids in this season, or their children, or even if they don't have children, I'm excited to do some of the activities that are for kids. And so it's just a great way to kind of stop and step back during this season. And 2020, that may be the year for us to do that, to take a step back and really kind of focus back in on Christ and on Emmanuel. Let's talk a little bit about maybe ways that you have celebrated Advent in the past, perhaps with your community. I know for you, Lindley, you and Ben lived in a place that was primarily unchurched before you moved here to Nashville. So tell us, how did that affect maybe how you celebrated Advent with your community there?
Well, I mean, we lived on a street of completely unchurched people, so everybody was. And so with our children, we really tried to talk with them a lot about just loving people for who they are. And so it wasn't specifically Christian, but every year we would have all of our neighbors in, and we would purchase gingerbread houses for all of them. And what we would try to teach them was just that part of the joy is, we wanted unchurched people to come into our home and have a joyful experience and, begin to even learn to trust us. And so, I mean, it wasn't specifically Advent, but it was, because it followed, if the Advent candles are hope, love, joy, and peace, we really would talk with our kids a lot about, this is what we have to show our unbelieving friends is, that you can come into a household and we're not crazy, we're not unusual, we're just fun. And so we would just try to have fun with them and then walk away and have a good experience and say, that was fun to be in their home.
Now, Elizabeth, I know for some people, they may be planning to celebrate Advent for the first time. Mm-hmm. What recommendations would you have for someone who maybe they're new to Advent, this is even their first time hearing about it, or their first time that they're really wanting to observe it as a family? What recommendations would you have for them?
I would say don't stress about it being done the right way. So I have researched this a few times because I've written for it for Lifeway Women a few times, or written about it. And I think as I was researching it, churches are disagree on, not they're not contentious about it, but just what comes first: hope, joy, peace, love. What's the order that we do them in? Which candle represents which thing? All this kind of stuff. And I think it's an ancient tradition, but at the same time, it's very fluid. So you can the point is to prepare your heart for Jesus's first coming, to celebrate his first coming while looking forward to his future coming. And so the ways that you do that can involve candles and an Advent wreath, or it could not involve those things. So I think the point is to just focus on Jesus and to focus on Christ and to be thankful that he came to the world to save us from sin. And be thankful that he's coming again someday to make all the wrongs right. And whatever you do to do that, it doesn't matter. However that works out for you. I know a lot of churches do the candles, and I think there's something lovely about that as we talk about the light of the world coming into the world, the light coming into the world. I think there's something beautiful about candles and Christmas lights and all of that, but for sure you don't need to do that in order to celebrate Advent.
And I love that too, just give yourself grace.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of moms, I see them just striving for that perfection.
Yeah.
You have to create that perfect experience, whatever it is for your kids. And that's not, what it's about. Yeah. So I love that encouragement.
I'm pretty sure I've never done all 25 days on the days that they're supposed to. It's oh no, we missed a whole week. Just eat the chocolate, or let's read these verses real quick. But I think as long as you're looking toward Christ, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of celebrating it for the 4 weeks is that, you have kids, when on Christmas morning, it's really hard for 4 small children to not just be excited about the gifts. So you can do your best and you can make your birthday cakes for Jesus and all those things, but I mean, to celebrate a little bit along the way really keeps them focused on what the point is, because on Christmas morning, I mean, it's a distraction. I mean, they're busy and they're excited. So, I mean, that's what I like. There's no set way to do it, and there's no, like, you don't have to do it every single day, but just kind of building up to the end.
Now, Lindley, I know you have a teenage daughter, and tell us a little bit about maybe how you would encourage her to use this study to reset her heart for the Advent season.
For sure. So I have a 16-year-old daughter who's looking at colleges, studying a lot, and she loves studies like this. And so she and I will definitely do it. I'm always looking for studies to do with her. It's really hard sometimes to connect in a busy world, and so to be able to do something like this at the same time with her and discuss it and have intentional things to talk about is really, I'm excited about doing that. And then, you know, I have 3 boys who maybe aren't as focused, but we could do the weekly kids activities with them. So, I mean, I'm excited for our whole family to do this.
Lindley, I think that is such a great reminder. You know, this study is written by women. I have 3 of you sitting right here with me for women, but it's also a great resource for young women. And it also has, you know, those weekly activities to do with your children, and to do, you know, just some fun for yourself to reset your heart for the holiday season. So we are really excited. You know, we're going to be kicking off the O Come, O Come, Emmanuel Advent study on our Instagram. So you're going to want to be sure to follow along for exclusive content, some community discussion, just some wonderful things. Thank you guys so much for just contributing to this study. You guys can learn more about O Come, O Come, Emmanuel at lifeway.com/Emmanuel.